Dunning-Kruger effect. It basically says that people with a limited ability in a skill are overconfident. Kids, adults, teenagers, you name it. Everybody wants to learn about investing. Nobody wants to take the time to step back. Charlie Munger says it's, or Warren Buffett, this is what is applicable to and what is the best solution for 99% of the population.
What is that one book that changed your life in financial freedom? It is one thing to make money, but to keep that money and grow that money, and for that money to make you more money, requires a completely different level of skill set. Today we have someone with us who has trained more than 10,000 individuals, worked with a number of organizations, and helped them make smarter financial decisions. She's an author, she's a founder at KFI Global, and she's also an educator. We'll dive in and understand from her and learn from her how to achieve financial freedom. Marilyn, welcome to Deep Talk.
Thank you for having me, Jatin.
It's my pleasure. Marilyn, this is a very important matter, or whatever you call it, money. Everyone is driven by money, right? But yet so many people can't achieve financial freedom. They're struggling. So what is this one thing that you feel stops people from achieving financial freedom? Because I believe everybody can achieve financial freedom.
That's a really good question, and it's got so much of nuance and context to it. I think the number one thing why people, it's the biggest mistake that they make is that they don't think about it strategically, right? Because it doesn't matter what phase of our life we're in, we're always focused on some big problem, whether it's getting the grades in school or getting into high school or getting into college or getting a job, getting married, starting a family. There's no time to think about this important concept, which is how do you manage your money properly? And yet, if you think about it, it's the one thing that affects every single decision of your life. How long you're going to have to work, your retirement plans, whether you buy a car, whether you buy a house. I mean, you think about any decision that you're going to make in the next couple of years, it all comes down to money. And yet, it's the one thing that's not taught about in school. It's the one thing that we are not trained for. We don't take the time to think strategically about it. We all worry about it. That we do quite a bit of, but we don't think about it. We don't give it the appropriate level of thought and consideration.
Yeah, that's a good point. When you said we all worry about it, I think worry is one of the most fundamental emotion that humans have. We just love to worry about things, right?
It's not very useful, but we do it a lot.
Yeah, we do it a lot, but we don't action it. We know the answers sometimes.
That's what I meant.
Taking action is difficult.
We don't take strategic action. We might take action like take a loan or let's do something that seems good in the short term.
Yeah.
But I think if we step back and think about it more strategically, our decisions would be so much more considered and would really work out well.
So you spoke about we don't get the right education in school about financial literacy, right? And I definitely agree to that, because I have struggled in my school life, college, university, and till I actually started working. I was struggling even then because I didn't know how to manage my finances. You're thrown out there in this wild world, and suddenly you realize, well, you're making some money, but what do you do with it? So how do we bring this, or I don't even know if schools right now teach financial education in the right way, and you're an expert, so you can tell us about it more.
But see, the whole schooling system isn't fit for purpose, right? And that's not news. We understand that it's built on a Prussian military model, and it was built to educate people and to prepare them for the industrial age. It's not fit for purpose anymore. But particularly when we come to financial literacy, schools are beginning to think about it, but not nearly as deeply, I don't think there's a single school anywhere that does enough to teach kids about managing money. And yes, they have their own, it's not fair to blame them because they have their own set of constraints. Their curriculum is as it is overloaded. They don't have the time. They don't have the expertise. But aside from that, I think I don't think we can completely take away the responsibility from schools. And I think it's important that kids do learn, or at least learn how important it is to learn about it. But yes, that's essentially what I feel about schools.
Right. No, that's true. I think it's important that kids learn at a very early age, along with learning physics or learning math?
Well, they're definitely going to use it more. I mean, the percentage of students who use math or use physics in their daily life is minuscule.
Yeah.
everybody uses money. Everybody needs to learn how to do this, but yet no one's taught about it. It just
Right.
seems really like a really weird situation.
Yeah.
But
And
it's true.
changing schools and getting financial education in the right way obviously sounds like a really massive, big plan and will require a number of people coming together, making that effort.
Yeah.
But from your point of view, is there something that you are doing to educate teenagers, for example?
Yeah, so we go into schools and we have free workshops for the students. When I say free, the students don't pay for it, the schools don't pay for it. This is sponsored by the companies that we work with, the organizations that we work with. It's part of their CSR mandate. So I think it sort of ticks everyone's boxes. The schools are happy to have us. The students benefit a lot, and the company also, sort of gets to showcase its CSR and ESG initiatives. But what we do when we take it to the schools is that then it becomes compulsory. We don't say, you can come if you want to. It's compulsory to attend, and it's a very in-depth, comprehensive program that we run. It's not like sort of a 20-minute, half an hour sort of talk. We actually dive deep into the important concepts that they learn, but yet we do it in a way that they really enjoy learning. And also you have to understand, this topic is so relevant. It's so, most kids get, they're tuned off from school or they're bored because they don't see the relevance of what they're learning. They don't know how to apply it to their everyday life. Here, whatever we are talking about, every single topic, you can think about 10 ways that you can relate it to your life right now. So I guess we're lucky in the sense that the subject's so emotive. Everybody can relate to it. Everybody sees why they need to use it. So it's easy to make it interesting and interactive.
So that's a step in the right direction.
I think it is.
But
yeah.
do you have to really convince the authorities in school that this is an important topic and that we should be training and educating kids about it, or
yes,
is it easy sell?
No, it's not. It's never an easy sell.
Right.
Jatan, you should know that nothing's an easy sell. But I have to say, earlier it was a lot tougher. Now schools have begun to realize. I think there's enough of the market has been educated enough to realize that financial literacy now actually takes center stage. And, it's part of the UAE vision as well. So schools are beginning to become a lot more open to it. But initially, yeah, and there are still some schools who have, 100 other issues as to why they don't want to or can't. But we have a lot of schools yet who are really very supportive of the initiative because they've seen the difference that it has made to the students' lives as well.
Right. So one of the ways that I have achieved financial freedom, so to speak, is investing a lot of money in stocks. Mm-hmm. I wanted to understand your point of view. Firstly, you come from India, I come from India. Whenever we heard the word investing in stocks, this was way back, it was considered a gamble. Mm-hmm. Or a taboo. People are like, oh, don't invest in stocks. It's not the right model of investing. Mm-hmm. To break that and then to invest in stocks. So where do you think we are right now? So let's talk about India, for example. Do you think parents still think that investing in stocks is not the right thing to do?
I don't just think it's in India. I think everywhere there is a whole focus towards investing, right? Everyone now wants to, and you talk to kids, you go to schools, the first thing they want to know about is how do I invest in crypto? How do I invest in the stock market? It doesn't have that taboo anymore. But unfortunately, I think we've swung to the other end of the pendulum. Everyone wants to get into it. Everybody's interested to do it. But what I'd like to suggest is that people just take a step back, because before you start investing, there is a whole lot of other stuff that you need to do to get prepared to invest. Mm-hmm. And that's the part that everybody skips. They want to jump straight to investing. But jumping straight to investing is sort of like putting a roof on a house without building strong walls and strong foundations. It's a recipe for disaster. And nowadays, that's what I see happen very often with kids, adults, teenagers, you name it. Everybody wants to learn about investing. Nobody wants to take the time to step back, build your foundations. And that is so important because investing, like I said, is the icing on the cake, but you need to have the cake first.
Yeah.
And there's a certain amount of knowledge, there's a certain amount of education that you need on which you can build your investing portfolio, on which you can build your investing philosophy. Unfortunately, the way most kids are doing it or getting into it is not actually the right way. They don't understand debt. They don't understand emergency funds. They don't understand some basic terms.
Right.
And investing only works when it's part of a well-oiled machine.
Yeah.
Like you're saving, you're budgeting, you're spending wisely, and therefore you can invest the difference.
Yeah.
You start off with investing, you're not saving, you probably have debt, you don't have an emergency fund, you don't understand risk capital. I mean, I can just go on and on and on, which is what I'm saying. Before we start talking about investing, there are so many different things that people need to consider, and which they don't. So I think the focus should actually be on that. And then, because once you do that and you educate yourself, and then you understand whether is stock picking good for me, or should I just invest in an ETF or in a low-cost index fund, what actually makes a lot more sense to do. So,
so what advice would you give to a 17-year-old who's just starting off, or 18-year-old, just out of college, university, doing some part-time work, paying for their education, and then getting into the world where you have your first job offer and you're making some money in terms of your salary? So how would you bifurcate that distribution of salary? How much would you save? How much would you invest? It can't be generalized.
There are, there's a rule. There are rules for everything with personal finance, but I think there's a 50-30-20 rule where it says 50% of your income is on your needs, 30% on your wants, and the 20% you save or invest. It's a great general rule, but I think everyone should tweak it to sort of suit their context and their situation. But more than how much you invest is, I really would say, I come back to my first point of, learn about it first. Learn the basics about it first. Learn the basics and then go through a program. Don't go to someone who's saying, I'm going to teach you about cryptocurrency. It needs to be an educator. It needs to be someone who's teaching you all the options without making money off you because you're buying some product from that person. You see, it needs to be an unbiased educator. You see how the difference is. There's a lot of difference. And once you do that,
get-rich schemes on social media.
That's exactly it. And part of the thing before investing is you have to understand what are your emotional triggers. Most of us don't understand that. We don't understand how companies can trigger our buying impulse, and they do it so beautifully. They are training their algorithms every day, spending millions of dollars in the algorithms, teaching young people how to buy. How much of training have young people had in how to buy and how to identify what those triggers are? They don't know anything. They're just like sort of being like lambs to the slaughterhouse, And I think.
But there's an important point you make there. But also the bigger question, and this is slightly off topic, is about training kids right now where they lack patience with all the algorithms being built in a way where you're on shorts or reels or whatever that you're doing, and literally the patience level is non-existent.
What you're talking about is delayed gratification.
And everybody wants to get rich quick. And there are so many get-rich schemes, like I said. So everybody falls in that trap where you start investing in a company because everybody else is. And then soon you realize that it's not going anywhere, and all your hard-earned money is probably not making the kind of returns that it should. And you were demotivated and don't know what to do next. But again, it comes back to the basics where you don't have the foundation. Why did you in the first place invest in the company just because everybody else is doing it?
Exactly. And I think that it brings me back to 2 points that I'd like to make. And it's been a realization just after teaching 10,000 students and understanding that I've come to the realization, especially with younger kids, it's not about teaching them about money and budgeting. That's the easy bit. What I think parents should focus on and is building up the right values in your kids, building up values of integrity, of patience, of generosity, of kindness, of a sense of justice and fairness. Because once you build these things, everything else falls into place. But if your child might know budgeting really well, but if they don't have that, like you said, the patience, they don't have the kindness, they don't have the integrity, they don't have they don't have the depth of understanding, you're not going to get anywhere, irrespective of how much financial education you give them. So the financial education is a great thing to give your kids, but it's always layered on the values that you actually get your kids to develop. So I think as parents, don't even bother about, especially when your kids are young, focusing on, I need to teach them to save and invest and budget. No, just really develop the right values in them, and I think automatically they're just going to make the right decisions, not just financially, but I think just being good citizens of the world as well, which is really what we need.
Yeah, we need that. And are you working on any sort of course or any sort of?
Yeah, so we do have programs that we
I'm talking specifically for young parents or for kids who are just getting into that age where they're going to start making their own income?
So you see, Jatin, the thing is, it's really very simple. There's not different principles depending on what
Right.
age you are. Whether you are 7 or whether you are 70,
Okay.
the principles of personal finance are the same. Now, I
Right.
know a lot of people like to make it very complex and complicated. It's not. It's actually really very simple. And the same concepts you would teach a 7-year-old are the same ones you'd want to teach a 70-year-old if that's his first lesson in financial education. So it's not like, oh, just because you're in a different phase of life, the principles
rules
I'm
are
going to
different.
teach you or the rules are very much the same. You have to tweak it to suit your context and to suit your purpose and to suit your, the kind of situation that you're in. But essentially, it's really very simple. And I think we just like to overcomplicate it and use that as an excuse for not paying more attention to it.
Right. Right. So, with the rise of cryptocurrencies now, and that's the new trend. And as I said, with everybody on social media talking about cryptocurrency, everybody's falling into the cryptocurrency journey, right? Like everybody's investing at some point or the other. So where do you think we are headed with cryptocurrency? Do you believe in crypto? Is that something that you invest in?
Not personally, no, but that's again my personal philosophy. It's speculative, it's risky. I'm more of a long-term investor, and
Okay.
so for me personally, no. But I understand I understand the pull. I understand why people would be really interested in it. And as we're humans, I think it's but natural to be interested in the next shiny thing that comes along. It can be part of a well-diversified portfolio. You should, if you sort of keep a certain percentage of your money as play money and use that to invest in crypto, because that's my personal advice. That's what and if I would say give advice to someone, I'm like, yeah, okay, if you want to do it, if you really think that, it's fine. Keep a percentage of it. It shouldn't be more than 10% of your overall portfolio, and use that money as your play, speculation, gamble money.
Right.
That way, even if no matter, even if it goes up, always make sure that it's only 10%, so that tomorrow, if it does crash, you're never going to be, adversely affected to the point where you're on the streets and you have nothing to show for it, which is kind of what people are. They've put everything into crypto, and then when it hits rock bottom, they don't have any. They're literally on the streets with nothing to show for it. Right. So I think it should be part of a well-diversified portfolio, and it again comes back to being properly educated on the different. Crypto is just one aspect. What about the other aspects of investing that you haven't spoken about, like stocks and bonds and funds and real estate? It should be part of a well-diversified portfolio. Yeah. The problem happens when people are all in only in crypto. Then if the market crashes, which it will, it's everything cyclical, then you're left with nothing. And most of them don't have the staying power. They don't have the emergency fund, like I said, because they haven't prepared themselves for the investing journey. So then it becomes a very risky
thing. I think you mentioned that you're a long-term investor.
Absolutely.
And then I remember the words, I'm not sure if it's Charlie Munger or Warren Buffett, they said, my best holding period is forever.
Yeah.
And that's how compounding works.
Yes.
So I believe if you had invested like $1,000 in Microsoft about 20 years ago, would have been more than $25,000 right now.
You can't beat the power of compounding and long-term long-term investing. That's the only thing that actually works.
Tell us more about long-term investing, about compounding for our listeners. For example, if I have a certain amount of funds that I want to invest in a stock or equity or a bond or ETF every single month for the next 15, 20 years, how will the compounding work with this?
So first of all, I wouldn't say invest it in a particular stock, because then again, you're risking everything. And what if that stock goes down? Like until yesterday, NVIDIA was the golden child. Like you couldn't go wrong. This NVIDIA stocks were through the roof. Yesterday, they just DeepSeek. They've just taken a big hit. Like they're saying they're going to wipe trillions off the whole stock.
Yeah, I think it was the biggest loss in the history.
Exactly.
NVIDIA lost $600 billion in one day.
I think that's a great lesson. Exactly what we're trying to do. Don't waste your time trying to pick stocks, because you're not as smart as you think you are, and that's just a problem with us. We like to think, we think the stock is going up, but why do you want to risk it? Just low cost index funds. It's there for everybody. Like Charlie Munger says, it's of Warren Buffett. This is what is applicable to, and what is the best solution for 99% of the population. If you think you're in that 1%, then fine, go ahead. But by and large, you are part of the 99% that index funds are perfectly suitable for. So I'd say don't waste your time in stock picking, because that's very speculative, and no one is smart as they think they are, and
Right.
you can't keep track of the pace of innovation nowadays. And
Yeah.
just reading the news, it's just going to be very hard, especially if you have a full-time job. If you're a trader and that's your actual full-time job, then it makes sense. But most people listening to us, or most people, they have other jobs, or they're interested. They just want this as part of their financial stability. And in that case, I really would advise against stock picking.
Yeah, well, everybody thinks that they're the smartest, right? I mean, that's a human trait.
Well, there's actually a term for that. It's called the Dunning-Kruger effect. Have you heard of that?
I heard, yes.
So the Dunning-Kruger effect, it basically says that people with a limited ability in a skill are overconfident. They think they are very, very accomplished in that skill, and yet the people who actually have the knowledge, they don't think they are very good at that particular skill. It's the Dunning-Kruger effect, and I've seen this so much with regards to with kids, with money. The kids who are not even kids, I would say, even young adults. The ones who come into class thinking, oh my God, I know all this, like I'm so good at managing money. You dig a little deeper and they're the ones making the biggest mistakes and who know the least. And the people who have that, because the more you know, you just realize how much you don't know.
Yeah.
and that is something I think we all need to take.
Yeah, I think that's where the human mind keeps playing, right? I think anyone who's driving slower than you is an idiot. Anyone who's driving faster than you is a maniac. Because you always feel you're at the right speed.
That's true.
That's what our mind makes us believe.
Absolutely.
Especially in a bull market, you can get very carried away. Now we've spoken a little bit about investing and have a little bit of play money in crypto as per you and invest in ETFs. With proper education and in stocks. Tell us a little bit about debt and credit cards. We'll touch credit cards in a little bit later, but let's talk about debt. How important it is to be completely debt-free, number one. Secondly, is it like when you buy a home? Obviously, this is different geographies, but taking a loan for your home, is that a wise thing to do or not?
So again, there's no one right answer for everybody, right? If you just want to talk about debt, it's when you borrow money which you need to pay back, and there's two kinds of debt. There's good debt and there is bad debt. And I think that distinction is really very important for people to understand. Good debt is when you're borrowing money which is going to put you in, you're thinking long term. It's going to put you in a better financial situation in the future. Bad debt, on the other hand, is for instant gratification. You want it here now, really a bad idea, which instantly puts you in a worse financial situation. Now, home loans are typically considered good debt because they, the value of the property increases, you save on rent, etc. So by and large, home loans are considered good debt. Another good debt is education loans are considered good debt because you're hoping that as a result of that education you're going to get a high-paying job. So also considered good debt. But then you need to think there are so many ways in which an education loan can become bad debt. What if you drop out of college? You've gone to this fancy college and now nobody wants to hire you because your degree is kind of topic that no one really cares about. Now that becomes bad debt. So even though you studied it under good debt, it could very easily become bad debt. The home you buy, the property values could go down. You could have bought it in a bubble. Now the property values have sunk. There, it's become bad debt. So there is no, you really need to be smart about it and be smart about it in your context, but you really need to understand that there are two kinds of debt. And good debt can very easily become bad debt if you're not paying attention to it. And then there's bad debt, which is credit card debt, which I assume you're going to ask about next. That's bad idea right from the get-go. That's bad debt. No way that becomes good debt.
Right. Yet you see a number of people using credit card for instant gratification as well. I think the credit card debts all over the world have increased multifolds.
Absolutely.
People are using their income just to pay off the credit card debts, and that's increasing every passing year.
Yeah.
So what's your one advice for credit? I mean, are you suggesting that people should not have credit cards?
No, absolutely not. Not having credit cards or saying that credit cards are bad is like saying I'm never going to use a knife because a knife can be used to kill people.
Yeah.
But there are smart ways to use a knife. And just like that, there are smart ways to use a credit card. You just have to educate yourself. I think it all comes down to education. I know I seem to be sort of sounding like a broken record here, but that is the truth. If you educate yourself on how to use a credit card wisely, you can sort of benefit from all of the advantages of it, and yet you don't have to take any of the downside. And there are really easy ways to go about this. So I don't think credit cards are bad. I personally use credit cards a lot. Of course, just make sure you pay your bill in full and on time, and you should be fine with any sort of adverse sort of outcomes. But no, I just think you need to educate yourself on how to use it properly. And the issue is with, I mean, like I said, I've taught thousands of individuals. I can count on one hand the number of people who knew the interest on their credit card.
Right.
Nobody. Most of the kids seem to think that it's free because they're students, apparently. I'm like, no, that's not true. Or they think it's 3% a year, and again, not true. It's closer to 36 to 48% a year. But these are the misconceptions about credit cards that people have. And I think, again, educate yourself, and you have a very, very powerful tool that you can use for the benefits, and you can really make fantastic use of. But just take a little time to understand it a bit.
Yeah, I think credit cards is a very interesting topic. And personally, I've used credit card for the longest time. And I feel for the first couple of decades, credit card used me. And in the last decade or so,
you got your act together?
I've been using credit cards.
Okay.
So most of my tickets for my airlines, my miles, a lot of these are free now.
Exactly what I'm saying. If you know how to use a credit card properly, you can benefit from all of the advantages that it gives you. But you make one mistake with a credit card, and then it's like quicksand. It's debt you can never get out of. It's really difficult to get out of credit card debt, and you just need to be really careful.
Right. So I would suggest if people need a course, I haven't seen it, unless you can correct me. Is there a course specific to credit card? Is there something, a learning?
Well, we have a course specific to money management, and credit card is a very important
part of that.
How big is that
topic? I mean, how many hours?
We take almost an hour just for credit cards.
1 hour?
And, yeah.
But you think that's enough?
I think it's a very good start, yes. Right. Because like I said, it's not complex. It's not rocket science. It's really very simple, Jatin. Right. It's very simple. 1 hour is just because we like to give in little examples. We like to really go into details about how you read a credit card statement and different things like that. But I think an hour would be good. I mean, if people actually just put that much of time aside, I think they'd be in a fantastic position. But no one's going to, are they? Yeah.
I think the first lesson or the topic in that course should be don't use credit card to buy crypto. I think that'll be a catchy headline.
That would be a catchy headline.
Yeah. So now with organizations who hire your services and for training their, we spoke about schools, but now we're talking organizations.
We do employee training
for training.
Well. Yes.
Is that an easy sell? I know you said nothing is an easy sell, but when you compare it to schools.
So we recently got into this in the last 2 years because I initially thought, our target audience was younger people with schools, and then we slowly built up from there because I kind of thought, the next level is going to require, they're going to have already so much knowledge, but like I said, just like the principles I teach are the same at every stage. Yeah. The knowledge that they have, sadly, is very much the same as well. I mean, you can have young adults who are working their first jobs, but they have almost the same knowledge as kids in school who are in the 12th grade. And that's the scary bit. And I think organizations are beginning to realize now that money plays a really important role, and there's this whole focus on employee well-being. I think one of the best things you can do for your well-being is learn to manage your money properly, because money problems are the number one source of mental health problems worldwide. Yeah. And if you can deal with that, that really helps your overall mental health. And I think organizations are beginning to connect the dots on that now.
Yes. Do people that you train in these organizations, do they come back to you later on asking, we had learned this from you, but we are stuck in this, we need some financial advice on a personal level?
No, we don't do personal financial advice. And they wouldn't, because when you undergo the course and you really pay attention and you learn from it, you can use the rules to suit your context. So you don't need to ask me questions. I'll educate you to a point where you'll be answering all your questions yourself. You won't need to ask me anything, because personal finance is very personal. The advice I give you or what feels right for you will be completely wrong for somebody else. So there's no cookie cutter advice that personal advisors give. Right. We just want to teach them, these are the guidelines.
The basics.
Yeah, these are the guidelines, and based on this, you can play around a little bit, but by and large you need to stick to these rules. And based on your context and your purpose, and your sort of the the situation you're in, you can tweak it to make it work for you. And that's what, and also what we do is not focus too much on like the details. We really focus a lot on behavioral economics and what are the triggers? How do companies trigger you to buy, or what are the ways that they try and how do you identify scams? We said, we sort of hone your BS radar because there's a lot of BS out there. So how do you actually hone your BS radar so you know that, okay, this can't be true, I need to look. We train them to do their due diligence. If everybody just did that, it would take a whole lot of people. I mean, you're not going to fall for those scams, but they aren't taught to do that. They aren't trained to do that. It just takes a few minutes to do a little bit of due diligence on a company or a product that you're going to buy or invest in. Not many people do that. So when you train them to do that, you're building that awareness, and that doesn't really go away because once you're aware about something, you can't unsee it now, and it's going to train you to do that for every single situation that you're in.
Right. So this is so interesting that, and we all know it, and you just mentioned it, that one of the biggest stress that is created is through financial instability.
Yeah.
Yet, we all struggle simply because there is not right education to be financially stable or free. I'm again going back to education, and education right from the schooling time. I think we all need to do something about speaking to the authorities and getting this in schools in a way that everybody learns from a very tender age to manage money. Because if you're saying you're training in organizations and their knowledge of financial education is as much as someone who's just out of school, that's very alarming, isn't it?
It is, but it's the truth. I mean, you speak to anybody who has done trainings for companies, and they will tell you the same thing, that you tend to assume that people who are earning high salaries are just better at managing their money. No, they're not. They actually aren't, and their level of financial literacy isn't as high as what you'd expect. And yes, you make a good point. We all, and I've always said that. In fact, I've said that in my book as well. We really need to come together as a society. We need to get different stakeholders together. You can't just leave it on, the parents will, it's the parents' job or it's the school's job, because everybody has their own excuses about why they aren't able to do that. And maybe we can get into the parental excuses later. But that's true. We need to come together. We need to get the different stakeholders. We need to get the schools. You need to get the government. You need to get, you need to get the parents involved as well. So you're absolutely right. This is a multi-stakeholder kind of initiative, and that's exactly what we're doing with the way that we go through schools. Is we've got the organizations on. We have government, government certification. We are working with the schools, with the different schools, different principals. So it really is the closest thing we'd come to a multi-stakeholder initiative, and it's working really, really well. I mean, every year we are educating thousands of students on this, who would have otherwise just gone out and repeated the same mistakes that everybody else is making.
Right.
So we're just really taking away the excuse. You see, all of us had the excuse, right? Well, nobody taught us this. That's why we were fine for the first 15 years of our working life to have no savings. Exactly. What we are doing, and what I tell the students is we're taking away your excuse. I mean, you're still going to go ahead and make bad money decisions, but at least now you understand the repercussions of that.
Yeah.
We didn't. So I think essentially we're taking away the excuse of saying nobody taught us.
Yeah. So we've learned the hard way, and you can't really blame anybody, because how would our parents know what's best? Because they were not trained, they were not educated. So I think it becomes a moral responsibility for us to do more. You're doing a great thing by training these young school kids and organizations and people in organizations. But I think when I say more is to follow up whether and to track, like how schools do basically, there's a report card, to track whether they have really taken everything, they've absorbed it, and they're actioning it, and checking on them.
So we do case studies. We do off and on, case studies. We follow a student, and we 6 months later we figure.
Okay, that's good.
And it is really it is so heartwarming to listen to how they say that this one class changed their life,
right.
or what effect it's had. Because most, when I go to universities, and most of the time it's the business students who are attending,
right.
and they're like, oh, we know this, we're business students, or we're economic students. The issue is, and they leave the class thinking, oh, I could have started my life without knowing this basic information, and it's a big realization for them that in spite of maybe studying corporate finance or doing an MBA, they don't know these basics about personal finance.
Right.
So it's very easy to to connect the dots later and see, oh, this is how it helped me save better my first job, or I started investing now. It's very, very easy to make the case for better financial education. The research is there. There is the research. We don't need to reinvent the wheel. We don't need to say, oh, is this really effective? People have done the research. There's data to prove it all across the world that yes, people who have education like this, they're less likely to spend, to spend beyond a budget. They're less likely to max out their credit cards. So the data is there. We just need now to take action. And I think some people just say, oh, we need the data first. You're just prolonging the time that people are not going to learn it. We have the data. We just need to act on it.
Yeah. And what about these young parents who obviously think that they're giving the right education, the right culture about investing, about savings? How do we train these young parents? Not everybody is working in organizations, or we might not touch points in every organization, for example.
Yeah.
How do we train and educate them about what right investing and financial freedom is?
Well, if they are financially educated, they're going to pass on the right principles to their kids. But like I said before, I think as young parents, maybe what they would need, an important area to focus on is developing the values in their kids, which is a really there's not much talk around this. There's a lot of talk about, oh, we should teach our kids how to budget and how to invest, but bring up your kids with the right values so that all of this then becomes very easy to overlay on top of it. And I think it's really important. The principles, see, by and large, there are 4 main principles, right? It's super easy. Like I said, make sure you live with, make sure you're spending less than you're earning. Make sure you have an emergency fund. Make sure you're getting out of bad debt. Like you don't have any high interest debt, get out of debt. And the last one is make sure you invest regularly. You have these 4 principles. Everybody knows them. There are tons of books written about them. Any single person who talks about financial literacy will talk about these same 4 things. So it's very well known. It's not like it's a secret.
Yeah.
The question comes to, so why aren't more people doing it if it's just these 4 principles? Because there's a lot more than that, right? And I think your financial behaviors are at the intersection of psychology, behavioral economics, and neuroscience. And the more you understand your financial behaviors, the better it is. So what I like to think about more is, look beyond these 4 principles and look at it a little more strategically. So I have this framework that I've come up with. It's called the ADEPT framework. So
ADEPT.
ADEPT. ADEPT, right?
Okay.
So A is where you take agency. Don't wait for someone else, for your organization to say, oh, we're bringing in a financial expert, or don't wait for your parents or your wife or your husband, whoever it is. Take agency and understand that this topic is too important for you to leave to somebody else. That's the A, agency. D is discomfort. If you're not uncomfortable, right, that means you're not growing enough.
Right.
It means you haven't. Discomfort is the first sign that you are evolving as a person.
Right.
And as you study about money, and you're going to be, it's not very comfortable. You're going to realize the mistakes you make. You're going to feel inadequate. You're going to feel angry with yourself. But that discomfort is part of your learning journey. Understand it and embrace it. That's the D. E is for, like I say, education. You have to. There is no way around this. There are certain things that you need to learn that you're only going to know if you actually educate yourself, and that's education is a very big component of this. P is for purpose, because it really helps when you have a purpose behind your job. You need to feel really strongly about it, and once you figure out your purpose, then everything else it becomes easier. It's not just about the money. Remember, money is just a tool to help you live a more meaningful life. But if you haven't figured out what that meaningful life is, then no
amount of money is going to be enough.
Do you understand what I mean by purpose now? So that's the P. And T, it's the last bit, and is probably the most difficult bit to sort of train yourself on. It's train yourself to think long term. It's sort of like a decision-making model, but you just train yourself to think long term. Is this decision, what is going to be better for me 5 or 10 years from now? And that way, it may not be the answer that you want to hear, but it is the answer that you need to hear. And by just asking yourself this question, what is good for me long term?
Yeah.
And so if you put this framework together, so leave those 4 principles aside, which no one seems to be, irrespective of how many people talk about them, no one is sticking to them. If you think about this framework, it gives you a little more leeway to play with and understand, like, okay, it's working for me, and you can build your own little framework around that. And I find this a lot more useful than just saying those 4 principles and stick to them, because no one's actually doing that.
Yeah. That's what it is. I think there's a lot of learning out there with the internet. I think there are a lot of good content.
Yeah, we
to
don't
learn.
have an excuse to say we don't know anymore.
It's a desire to learn which is scarce.
Yeah.
I mean,
Like I
that's
said, take
the
agency.
whole point.
That's the first part. Just take agency of the fact that you need to teach yourself this and don't. And there's so many good books and blogs and podcasts. There's so much information out there. Really good information.
Talking about books, what is that one book that changed your life in financial freedom?
So I think the best book, I would say, is The Intelligent Investor by Benjamin Graham. And it's a tough reading book. It's heavy reading.
It's a very thick,
it's a heavy
technical
reading, but it really gives you everything. Like you go through that book and it's perfect. And the easier books to read is Unshakable by Tony Robbins, and there's Broke Millennial. There are lots of other books, but I would say this one it's like the Bible.
Yeah.
It's the Bible of financial literacy.
I've read some of it in bits and pieces, but not the whole book.
Not the whole book.
But I'll go back to
it's a really good
reading
book.
it. Yeah. Right. So just one personal question here. If you had $10,000 right now, where would you invest that money?
Low-cost index funds, just like I have always. There's no secret. That's what I would do. That's what I would advise anybody to do. Don't pick stocks. Don't say, oh, this is the next Nvidia or whatever. I would just blindly invest it in low-cost index funds.
And your holding period?
Forever.
It's a very difficult thing to do, isn't it? I mean,
it is, yeah.
You see a little bit of surge
fluctuation in the market.
Your stock market, your stocks have increased, or ETFs and low-cost index funds.
You really need to train yourself. But if you are disciplined, and self-discipline is a big part of it, if you can train yourself to just keep investing regularly, don't look at I don't look at it.
You don't look at your portfolio every day?
No, I don't. It's a really bad habit, because then if you're human, it's going to affect us. Like, oh my goodness, look how much my portfolio has sunk, or oh, look how well it's doing. I must be doing something really good. It's nothing to do with us, right? We just need to focus on the fact, put your money away, forget about it. Well, it's tough to do.
Easier said
absolutely
than done.
Tough to do.
I've been a victim of sometimes looking at my portfolio and I'm like, oh wow, this looks really good. Let me just sell something off. But then I regret it later.
Yes.
So to keep that discipline is not easy. No. And it's one of the hardest traits, I think.
That's, like I said, the long-term thinking. You just need to train yourself to think long-term, right? It's all part of that framework. Everything you bring up is train yourself to think long-term and say, in 10 years, would I be happy with the decision I made now? Most likely not. So.
Yeah, that's true. I think that's a very important lesson for whoever's listening to our podcast today, that go long-term and have long-term strategies, educate yourself. And if you don't have the time, so I'm a believer in stocks, and I love to read about the stock, about the company, how well they're doing, their financials, et cetera, but I've been doing it for some time now, and I wouldn't advise it to somebody who's just checking the portfolio once in a while. Then low-cost index funds or ETFs are good. But again, when you look at the stock market or even the cryptocurrencies, I've seen some sort of connection now. Every time the stock market falls, the cryptocurrency is falling as well. And it was inversely related at some point earlier when they started off.
And now it's not inversely related?
Now, every time there's a fall in stock market, there's a crypto fall as well. So that one thing has changed. I think there's a lot of...
I don't have the domain expertise to comment on that, and I really think you're checking your portfolio too often.
Yeah, so. I need to go back and educate myself. Right. What we're going to do now is have a rapid fire.
Okay.
I'm going to ask you a series of about 7 to 8 questions. You get about 10 seconds to reply every question.
Okay.
Right. I'm just going to open up my list of questions here. Right. So let's start with the first question. One book everyone should read. You already said that.
Already said that.
Which is that?
Intelligent Investor.
Intelligent Investor.
Benjamin Graham.
Right. Would you buy gold or diamonds for personal use? Because diamond loses value.
Gosh, but not every decision is financially perfect. I'm a big fan of diamonds, so diamonds maybe.
Right? I think most of the answers I would get from women, diamond. Right? The best piece of financial advice you have ever received?
Well, it's not just one best piece, but I'm a big fan of Morgan Housel, and I think he gives great financial advice, and the way he looks at different aspects of finance are really different and really eye-opening. So I'd say I'd say everything that he says, Morgan Housel. And in fact, you can add that book to one of the favorite books as well. It's The Psychology of Money. And his new one,
I've
which
read
says
it.
Same
It's
as
very
Ever.
nice.
He's just published another book. It's called Same as Ever. Both books
Same
are
as
excellent.
Ever.
Yeah.
Okay,
Both
I need
books
to
are
put that on my
excellent.
list.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Well, credit cards, blessing or curse?
It depends on how you use them. Depends
Yeah.
on how smart you are. If you are very smart and you've learned, then I think they're an absolute blessing. I personally couldn't do without my credit card.
Right.
But if
so it's a blessing for you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. Saving or investing?
Investing,
By far.
by far.
Right. Investing in stocks or crypto? We know the answer.
Yeah, you know the answer.
Only the play money in crypto.
You're a quick learner.
So if you had to splurge on some materialistic item, what would you splurge on? Like,
Okay, this answer is going to sound really funny, but it's books.
Books.
For me, books are my personal splurge. They're my guilty pleasure. Absolutely,
Right.
books. I probably
Right.
spend a lot more than I should on books, but it's not something I ever
and
tried.
you read all of them.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And it's not something I try to control either. I like it. In fact, when I talk to my kids, they have a limited budget for everything else. When it comes to books, I'm like, that for that your budget is unlimited. Buy as many books as you want. That is my personal commitment. That
Right.
you're not going to say, oh, I want to buy the book, but I can't have it.
Do they read as well? Quite
Oh yeah,
regularly.
they do read.
Right. I'm struggling
do.
to get my girls to.
Do you read regularly?
I read very regularly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice.
And I'm rereading again, which is this amazing book from Naval Ravikant, the Almanac
Yes.
of
Okay.
Naval. Oh, I love that book. Right. So, is there a financial rule you think everyone should follow? Just one financial rule.
Everyone should follow.
Yeah.
There are many that they should follow, but the most important one that I wish I had learned earlier in my life is the pay yourself first principle.
Right.
Where whatever, most people, when they get their money, they first pay their bills, and then it's like needs, wants, and then investing. I'd say flip it around, and you automatically take a percentage of that and put it away towards your investment or your savings. And I mean, just doing that is going to completely change how much you save, how much you invest. And it's so simple. All you're doing is just flipping it around.
Yeah.
Because when you wait to see how much I have left to invest, mostly you're not going to have anything left at the end of the month. But if you take it out in the beginning of the month, which is what they mean by the pay yourself first principle, you're ensuring that money is you're ensuring that you have to live on what is left over.
Right.
So it's a really simple rule, but it's something that can really drastically change your finances around.
Right. And if you start, say, for example, if you start early investing, your journey of investing, educate yourself, everything that we've discussed, you educate yourself, learn the fundamentals of investing, where you're investing, compound it, wait for a long time for your money to grow. What do you think is a good age for someone to retire where they're completely free from the rat race? There is no end to it. But for example, if somebody just wants to end the rat race, starts investing at 18, and wants to attain early retirement, you think it's possible?
Are you talking about the FIRE movement?
FIRE, yes.
Okay, so the FIRE movement is it's great philosophy, and I mean it makes you very mindful of your spending. It helps you to be more financially disciplined, but it's not great for everyone.
Right.
The FIRE movement is more for it is used by people who are high earners and they have high disposable income. So for them, it works out a lot more because with the whole FIRE movement, it means that they ask you to save between 50 to 70% of your income. Now, if you're a high income earner, you have few dependents, you don't have kids, it's easier for you to do that. For most people with regular lives, it's not so hard. I mean, it's it's not so easy.
Right.
It's a lot harder to do that. And also, they say you're going to really sort of be frugal for these next 15, 20 years of your life. But this could also be the best 20 years of your life.
Yeah.
Do you actually want to
That's
be
a
that
journey.
frugal? It's a journey. So I think it's a very personal decision.
Yeah.
It might work for somebody, but it tends to work more for people who are high earners. It doesn't work so well for people who are not high earners. So that's why the FIRE movement has come under a little bit of criticism over there.
Yeah.
But again, it's a personal decision, and it's personal finance we're talking about. Every rule, I would say when it comes to personal, throw all the rules out the window. Forget about following rules. tweak all of them.
Yeah.
Because none of them were made for you and for your circumstance and for your context. None of those. Those were all just, so you need to take those rules, tweak it for your personal circumstance, and then you're going to get something that really works.
Right, right. Okay, well, that's fair enough. That brings us to the close of this podcast. I think this has been a great conversation. I've learned a thing or two. And
Very kind.
How do people connect with you who want to learn a little bit about your courses, want to have some questions for you?
Our website, kfi.global, and on LinkedIn, I'm very active. It's probably the only social media platform I'm actually active on. LinkedIn, you can connect with me on LinkedIn, and I think that's the best and easiest way to do that.
And if any questions come my way, I'll send them off to you.
Thank you.
But thank you for making the time.
Absolutely.
It's been a pleasure.
No, it's been really enjoyable. Thank you so much.
Thank you.